Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Wynn's Kitchen podcast. I'm your host, Wynn Austin, founder and CEO of Wynn's Kitchen. Come join me on this journey as I learn how to grow my Asian sauce brand from my kitchen to the shelves. Today, we have a special guest, Jimbo Somek, the founder of Jimbo's Naturally, an organic grocery store known for their focus on sourcing quality, organic, and natural foods, their community involvement, and also promoting environmental practices. They currently have 4 locations in San Diego and just celebrated their 40-year anniversary. Jimbo, it's such an honor to have you on my show. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure being here.
Well, I'm a huge fan of your store, and I spend a lot of time there.
That's good for your product and for us.
Between shopping for myself and also doing the demos for my satay chili sauce. And I have to say, with me spending so much time there, it's really influenced the way I grocery shop, the way I eat, and I really feel like it's really made a huge impact on me being more environmentally conscious, which I tried before, but I feel like now I'm on like a whole nother level. So
Well, that's great. I think we don't get up and stand up on a soapbox and try to hammer anything home, but sometimes the very nature of what we're trying to do kind of influences people to perhaps change their eating habits, their environmental practices. You know, uh, I've always believed that I'm a product of my own experiences. And so that's what got me to where I am. And so if we created some experiences for you or any customer or vendor that changes their perspective, great. We're not going to force anything upon anyone. It's just who we are and what we do. So thank you for those comments.
yeah, no, and my husband knows now. He gets in trouble when when I send him to the grocery store and he comes back from, a big box grocery store and I was like, I specifically said I want this at Jimbo's.
Well, I don't want to get in between what might go on, and I don't want to be responsible for any issues that may cause in a relationship. So,
No, but it's all good. I think we both can really appreciate the difference in the quality. Like once you've had, good quality fish and the meat and even the organic vegetables, it's very, you can taste the difference when you go back. And so it's like
well,
a huge shift. Yeah.
if you're in our store the next few weeks, and we still have some of the peaches and nectarines that we have from Matsumoto, and I'm forgetting the other major one that we have, but they're awesome tastes. They're incredibly flavorful, and it's definitely worth the trip. I bring some times for my family, and the other day I was bringing some white nectarines, and I
Yeah.
said I said to my wife and daughter, it's like candy. You gotta eat some of these puppies.
I love them. I mean, I love your produce, but what I'm really interested in is, you know, I know it's been 40 years since you've been serving this community. Like, what inspired you to open a natural grocery store, and what problem were you hoping to solve for the shoppers?
Well, you can keep the 40 years, say it in a low voice because it makes me feel old. I actually, before I opened my store, I started working at a co-op in Ocean Beach called Ocean Beach People's Food
Hmm.
Co-op, and I got exposed to natural foods. I had finished 1 year of college and came out to visit my brother who was living in Ocean Beach, and he said, you might want to do some volunteering at the co-op, and I said, okay. And so I volunteered there, and I started to learn about food and organics and, health, and, how that might impact me, my body. And so I did that off and on for about 10, 11 years. And as I went through that process of learning about natural foods, I just felt like I had some thoughts and ideas around how I could have my own company. I think in part because working for the co-op, as much as I learned some amazing things, especially about how to manage, other people, because it was a co-op in the context of everybody got a vote, and no one was in charge of anybody else. Everybody had one vote, and whoever, when something came up, any issues, it was decided that way. It really helped me understand the importance of getting a buy-in from everyone,
Hmm.
but at times it was very inefficient and ineffective because one week a decision would be made and then next week other people would show up and they would change that decision and whatever.
Hmm.
So it was frustrating at times for me in that environment. And I just got to a place where I just said, I really love what I'm doing. I believe in what I'm doing. I think it's better for, people's health. I think it's better for those people who work the farms and get exposed to chemicals. It was something I was passionate about. And I actually went. My family is originally from New York. My parents were still living in New York, and I went back to New York to tell them, this is what I wanted to do. And they had been in retail, and they said, "You don't want to be in retail. It's 24/7." They tried to convince me not to, and I said, I really love what I'm doing." And they said, "Well, if you're going to do it, then at least do it." It took me a while to convince them that's what I wanted to do, and then they said, "Well, if you're going to do it in New York where you at least got family." And I said, I get it, but I'm familiar now with what goes on in San Diego. I've already got relationships with farmers, which was to me critical to the business. And so, somehow, they went from don't want get me into retail. If you're gonna do it in New York where they lent me money to get started.
Wow.
And so, I owe them a lot to how I got into the business. And I just, I've always said I'm fortunate. At the time I opened my first store in '84, natural foods was coming into the forefront. Whole Foods was making a big entry into not just local natural food stores, but nationally they were growing. And I think there were many of us who got into natural foods in the '80s who were, or even in the '70s, who were, weren't looking at it as anything beyond maybe, having your own store, serving the community, hopefully making enough money to live on, which is where I came from. I didn't know if I was going to be that successful or how much I was going to make. But
Right.
then natural foods started to explode in part because of Whole Foods. And so I always said I've been fortunate to come in when I did, and there were a lot of things that unfolded afterwards that helped grow the industry, and I just kind of rode the coattails. And but I think we've also, been part of that growth, and I'm really proud of that for the folks that have worked at Jimbo's.
Yeah, I mean, you know, back in '84, I can imagine it was still like a smaller group of people, right? Like even for me, I really just started my health journey 7 years ago, and I always thought I was healthy. I exercised, I cooked, but we really did I really didn't know. I remember I lived, in the Forest Ranch area. Even the first time I went to Jimbo's, like, 12 years ago, I didn't know what to do there. I was like, I've never seen a grocery store like this." And so, it was just such a different, culture for me because I used to go to, like, my basic American stores, my Asian markets. But it was when I learned, when I was having health issues, that all those sauces, Asian sauces I was eating, there weren't even any real ingredients in there. And I learned that that was what was making part of the problem, just in the big scope of things, but that food makes such a huge difference in your health.
Well, when I got started, I remember, you know, probably within the first month or so, I said to myself, and you were asking me about, what my hopes were. I said, I hope at some point that there will be every store or every town in every city in every state would have stores that would have natural and organic foods. I said, and people would say, well, why would you want that? And wouldn't that be competition? I said, the more people that get exposed to it, the better it is for the health of the population. And I said I probably have a head start on a lot of the other natural food stores because I had been involved in it. And if they do a better job of, selling it, then that's fine. But people have the opportunity to buy organic foods, I said, that's great. I want to be part of that. And it's kind of interesting because now there are a plethora of organic food stores, but even the conventional stores, almost every one of them has sections of organic and natural products and organic produce. And, it is competition and I get it, but I'm glad that the way I look at it is somebody who goes into a conventional store and buys, or an organic product or a grocery, a grocery product, or meat that's grass fed, they get exposed to the industry. And if they decide to make a huge shift, then they'll probably venture into maybe Jimbo's where they hadn't been there before, and they can identify with some of the products, and then they can see more products. So, in some ways, yes, it's competing, but in some ways, they're helping us expose the products that we sell to a greater population than we can. So, it's worked out for me.
I love your outlook on that. It's just kind of like focusing on what you're doing and then really building that culture. Because I would have to tell you, a lot of people I've met in the store or talked to where I'm like, oh, I'm in Jimbo's. Like they really see it as they're so committed to going to Jimbo's. They like it's like a cult. I feel like it's like, and I feel like I'm like becoming part of that cult. And for me, it's great because I a lot of my friends are also founders and have their brands at Jimbo's. So I buy all the stuff that my friends' brands too.
Yeah, you've posted a lot on Instagram, and yeah, I don't see that. And a lot of times you mention a lot of the other smaller folks that have products that we carry, and I think it's awesome. You all support each other in many ways that I think you lean on each other. You probably grow from each other, and that's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, what do you think that how do you think that Jimbo's is able to create that sense of connection and like that loyalty to the stores? Because I feel like, even with 4 locations, you have such a strong presence and involvement in San Diego.
Well, I think there's a number of things. One of the mantras we have at Jimbo's is, the sense that if we're in a community or neighborhood, wherever we are, and and they're supporting us, we need to give back to the community. And so there's a lot of involvement in the local communities that our stores in or outside of those, communities to support various different organizations. We make charitable donations, gifts, gift cards, presents at events where we give out food. I don't look at it as anything but really showing appreciation for the community that is supporting us, that customers coming from that neighborhood are buying our products, and we need to give back to it. And I think the other part is, I've always had the value that it's important to be transparent. And so we make, like everyone else, we make mistakes, but if we make mistakes, we're pretty upfront about, well, we're not pretty, we own up to it, and we don't try to hide it. We're not perfect, but I think people have come to trust us. And even like when we opened up our Carmel Valley store, after we moved it about 100 yards from where it originally was, we decided that we weren't going to carry any water in plastic because we felt like, we didn't want to contribute to, plastic in our oceans and whatnot. And I think, when I first said that we would do this, there was some pushback. Really, this is what you want to do? Because if you go to any grocery store, conventional or organic, and you look at the top sellers, water in plastic is at the top of, if you put the top 50 items, there are probably 20 of them that are relative to water. And
Yeah.
I said, no, we got to walk our talk. We're talking about being an environmental company, and we're just going to have to work around it. And I think, to some extent, not that it was intended that way, beyond just trying to be who we were or who we are. I think it, it, it kind of solidified people's perspective that we're not doing it because, hey, it's all about the money. We're doing things that we feel it's the right thing to do, to support you know, best environmental practices and, the best quality foods. And I think, people appreciated it. And again, that wasn't what we intended to do, but it just turned out that way. And we continue to do that. And again, we're far from perfect. There's a lot that we still trying to push towards. And I think probably the last thing, and you should, you probably are as much, you see it from your perspective, is that people know we're out in the community. We support a lot of the local folks that are trying to get started. And,
Right.
you know, I give credit to our staff, the buyers, because when we don't just say, hey, yeah, we'll pick up your product or whatever, our buyers really work hard to make sure that there's, support for them. There's no advantage for us to bring in a product and just leave it on the shelf and feel like, okay, it's just sitting there. We want to sell it. That's the purpose of it.
Right.
And, our hope is that we work together with whoever it is so that we can, really support the product so they can succeed. And again, in some roundabout way, it's benefits us
Yeah.
because, I really don't know a lot about your history, but I assume you sold at farmers markets at some point.
I actually never did.
Did. Well, you're one of the few because a lot of people, I'll be interested to hear that piece because most of the people
Yes.
that come to us say, well, they started out at farmers markets or they started out with family and friends.
Right.
And so if you're someone who's done that and you're, and the farmers market is the better example
Right.
probably, and somebody comes in and says, well, you're only here once a week, where can I get it if I want it, or if I can't make it that time, where do I get it? And we say, you say, well, you can get it at Jimbo's. I mean, it helps our business too,
Right.
so there is a synergy in supporting that is beneficial to both folks. And that we've always operated from that. We always wanted to be in situations where it's a win-win situation. We're not, you got to be successful for us to be successful, and hopefully we have to be successful for you to be successful. And that's the way our mindset when we go into these relationships.
I can really back that up. I mean, every staff member, at every single store that I've been in are just so friendly. I mean, the buying team, marketing, I email Tommy all the time to come up with ideas, and I'm like, "Can I send you this recipe?" So it's really, I've always been, a big person on relationships.
Hmm.
So I've started, I think I was lucky enough I didn't start out the farmer's market way because I started this a little later in life. This is my fourth career. And of course, it's the accidental career that I'm like, and the hardest career that I've had. But all of my other businesses and career paths that I've had, relationship is huge. AI cannot, I'm a true believer, AI cannot replace that. It cannot replace that human connection. And I'm in some stores where I don't get that relationship, and it's hard. It's hard to get my product to be successful because there's no communication. I don't even know how well is it doing there. What else can I do? But with Jimbo's, everyone has been so helpful, and I mean, even the staff when I'm in there, from the vitamins department to the grocery checkout. I love Chuck. I told Chuck he's more famous on Instagram than he's at my neighborhood Jimbo's. But I love that connection. And I sent in my husband to get some meat a couple months ago, and he came back and he was telling me, he's like, oh, the butcher was saying, oh, he recommended the type of meat. He cut it to a size that he wanted. And he's not a, he's becoming a foodie because of me, but he just so appreciated that, just like that level of service and that connection instead of just like, oh, grab some meat, and he didn't know what type or which one to get. So the people in the butchery section, the seafood section, they're just very knowledgeable, and produce too. Like I had someone go in there. I went with my daughter, and he's like, have you tried this watermelon? And, I can cut
The
it.
watermelon I got, the Yumi watermelon. It's called.
Yes, it was so good. And my daughter, Audrina, she's 12 years old. She's a huge foodie. And so she was like, "Wow, that's so cool. That's so nice of him to cut to a smaller slice for us." So I that's actually rare in today's world, and so I love that culture that you've built at Jimbo's.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I've always said that not the grocery business and natural foods is, I've looked at it as it's a relationship based business. You know, you could probably do a lot of other businesses and order online or AI or whatever, but for us to be successful, I always say we're in the relationship business,
Mhm.
whether it's with our customers, with our staff, whether our distributors. It's important that we build relationships, and again, with a win-win kind of situation. We all need each other, and with our customers, yeah, it's relationships. I mean, I've always said the best form of advertising we can have is a happy customer.
Mhm.
A happy customer telling their friends or family or whoever makes much more of an impact than hearing an advertisement on radio or watching it on
Oh,
TV. And so the best thing we can do is to create that kind of environment, is hopefully create a positive environment for our staff. So our staff feels good about working, and when they come to work, that carries over to the experience that the customer has. And so
yeah.
it's very much a relationship based business. But I can see from your end that I mean, I don't know what other business you have had in the past, but you're very passionate about what you're doing. And so,
Thank you.
and you said it's may not be the most easiest of the businesses you've had, but I've always told people when they've asked about, what kind of work they want to do, or, if they want to ask me, hey, they want to open up their own store, what advice I would give them. And one of the first things I always say is, are you passionate about it? Because you're going to hit obstacles, you're going to be challenged, and it's going to be easy to give up when you hit those. But if you really are passionate about it, it makes it a lot easier to push through it and have the drive to, make it successful. It doesn't mean it will be, but you have a foundation there of, I don't know too many folks that have started a business and said, well, it all went smoothly from the beginning. There were no challenges and it was just awesome. Everybody hits some kind of wall at some point,
Yeah.
and it's important to feel really good about what you're doing and helps you get through the tough times.
Yeah, I tell people I've cried a lot.
And okay.
Yeah, because I didn't come from a food background. I've always just cooked for fun. So I learned about like shelf life stable, because I create the sauce in my kitchen just for myself, and and I feel like it tastes pretty much like how I first made it. But getting it to shelf life stable and scalable was a whole nother journey. But I learned, and I learned so much about non-GMO. Like I never really thought about it, and I specifically got non-GMO certified to be on your shelf.
Right. Got it. What was your motivation to get started in it?
Well, it was one of those things where I tried to quit a lot of times, because I had my background is I'm a banker. So I was
Hmm.
banking for 10 years, and then when I started having children, I started my own wedding planning and events company. So I had that for 12 years, and then during that time I wasn't feeling good. I, after my second child, and the doctors were like, well, everything's normal, or your blood pressure is a little high, your cholesterol is a little high. Maybe you need to go on prescription medication. And I'm an avid tennis player. I play a lot of tennis. I cooked at home a lot. So I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I didn't want to go on medication. So my friend turned me on like doing like a whole food diet, cutting out sugar, soy, gluten, no alcohol for 30 days. And there's a little bit more options now, but there was no option for Asian sauces that I could buy except for coconut aminos. You gotta, but there was like no flavor. And with my Vietnamese background, I'm used to a lot of flavors. So satay is my favorite chili sauce that I've eaten, the bad stuff, right? And I've started making it at home and I started putting it on salmon, on my eggs, steak. And I was like, this is really good. So, I like to be on social media. At the time it was Facebook. I would share what I'm eating, what I'm cooking, and I'm like making this sauce. And from there, people started asking for a jar. And so I was just making it for fun. And he would come pick it up off my porch and bring it to the tennis courts and deliver it from my
Your own little farmer's market.
yeah, I have my own little, and the list just kept growing and growing. And so here I am, I had two small kids, a wedding planning company, and I was up at 3 in the morning making 100 jars of sauce in mason jars. I'm like, this is crazy. But I did that for a few years because I'm like, I don't know how to move on from here. But I was really encouraged by a lot of my friends, and I'm like, I don't know, they're my friends, they love me. They don't know, they is someone that I don't know going to buy it. So I was really skeptical and risk adverse with the industry because I didn't know anything. But soon a lot of people start that I didn't know were reaching out. And so little by little I started researching, found a first co-packer in San Diego that was willing to help me make it shelf life stable. And I learned about pH levels. I didn't know anything about that. So I really started small, just one thing at a time. And my first batch was, I think, 200 jars. And I didn't know. I walked into Jimbo's. I saw Wade. I'm like, hi, I'm Wynn. He's like, okay, do you have a distributor? It's like, what's that? So I really learned just from doing and just asking and really putting myself out there. But I just loved it and people loved it and there was a demand. And I know there's more options now, but still I still have people who go to Jimbo's and buy it wherever. And they were the OGs getting it from the mason jars from the tennis courts, so that makes me really happy. And I think that's what really keeps me going.
Well, that's a great story, and yeah, there's probably along the way times when you're saying, "Is this really even something you want to do?" It's a lot an investment. It's not just money; it's time and energy, and trying to figure it out. Because when you start from scratch, you don't know, you don't know where, like distributor. What is that? How do I who are the distributor? Who's going to take my product? How do I? And some are probably better than others. How do you find someone to do it? And then dealing with the pricing.
Yeah.
I if you give it to your friend, it might be one price. But if you want to sell it at a price in a store, you got to have a lower price. So the store has to make some money on it too. So all those things you start having to figure out. So I'm sure you've had some great lessons along the way,
Oh,
and
yes.
give yourself credit for just even getting it on the shelf is an experience itself, and you deserve credit, as do almost every small startup company. It's a journey, and to get there is a great accolade.
Thank you. I really enjoy it, and sometimes people think, "Oh, you're on the shelves, you're, like this multi-millionaire." And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm still in the garage packing boxes, shipping it out, reusing cardboard." Like the economics of it. I tell people you have no idea how much packaging materials and boxes cost. But I think my nature of being scrappy
Yeah.
really helped me, and it's still one of those things where I think the economics was, even having a banking background, it's so different. I tell people I've never looked at a penny or a nickel the same way. Before it's like whatever, I did real estate too. Sure, I'll credit that $200. This is like pennies. It's like, okay, I have to, let's see what like every penny counts when it's on a big scale. It's really fascinating. So it's taught me a lot.
My wife she does from home what she calls her website is Cosmetics in the Kitchen. And she had going through the same pain, maybe even it's not on it. She's not trying to get into any store, but friends and family. She sources out the best organic ingredients and makes these, lotion, I say potions and lotions and
Yeah.
skincare products. But I see her sometimes, with a pencil and pad, and she's calculating. All right, I bought, a pound of this or a gallon of this, and what does that mean an ounce, and how much does that cost, and
Yeah.
enter into this, and how much am I supposed to make, and she's going through that whole process, and
Yeah.
it's challenging. I mean, I'll say to her, well, when you think about how much you're making, do you consider every time you do R&D and or something doesn't turn out, you have to toss it out? Then that's a loss. And when you go to the post office to mail it out, are you counting your time? Are you considering the boxes? Are you considering, all the packaging or whatever? And it's not like you just turn on a switch and it's there for you. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And like I said, I'm impressed by all the small manufacturers that we're able to do business with. And I think that's one of the reasons why we really work hard to try to support those people like yourself to be successful, because your success, helps us, and it's great to see, whether you stay just small or you grow into a huge national company, we're happy to be part of it, and if it helps us, it helps you get to where you want to go, then that's great. We want to be by your side.
No, I appreciate it so much. And I love what you're doing for the community. And sometimes I've had moments where I feel like the pressure to expand so fast and beyond Southern California and for a small business. I've told a lot of other founders that I talk to, I said be careful because one wrong move can really bankrupt you overnight. Like your whole business, everything you work for could be gone. And I always think back, I'm like, I should water the plant where I live and be in my community. Like Jimbo's has 4 stores, but you're doing well. You're deep in the community. And I think even maintaining the culture in each store, it's not easy if you have overnight you have like 10 new stores, right? The
Right.
training, the
Yeah, no, that's a big thing. When we look at expanding, we want to make sure that we can carry the culture with us.
right,
We don't want
right.
to dilute it at all.
So I get inspired by that and it helps me refocus. So this year I've been trying to be more focused on, really going deep and deepening the relationship in the stores I'm already in, instead of just trying to find that new thing. Because, with LinkedIn, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm national. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, I'm a loser.
Well, the real challenge will be when someone comes in and says, "Hey, I want to buy you or buy your company," and
Yeah.
what are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see when that day comes. We'll have another
Step at a
chat.
time, one step at a time.
So I'm so grateful and I know you support so many emerging natural food brands. What are you looking for in a new product or a brand and what kind of advice do you have for new manufacturers or people someone that's thinking about starting a food brand?
Well, I think I alluded to the first thing is to be passionate about
Yeah.
whatever product you're bringing to market, and hopefully you have a story to tell around it. People like stories and want to support people with good stories. Hopefully, it's not made up, but it's a true story, and I think that you to expect that there are going to be challenges that and that you did, and to understand that you're really going to have to learn how to bring the product to market. I think if you have an outward personality, you're going to have a greater chance of success than if you are somewhat quiet, because a lot, and from how you've been in the stores, is when you're starting out and people don't even know what your product is, you're going to have to do demos, or you're going to have somebody do demos. And but you're probably the best person initially to do it, the person, the founder, because people want to now they can relate. They know who you are, and you know, and if you have that passion, that's going to come out, and customers are going to see that, and there's a better chance of connecting, and almost whether it's an ongoing relationship or not, they see you when they buy that product, and so it's important to be able to kind of have a smile on your face and relate to whoever might be whatever questions customers might have. But, for us, there are other components to it, which in part is the ingredients that, you use to make that product, because we have certain standards that we always maintain. And so if they don't meet the standards, what's happened in the past is, people will go in a different direction. And some people will say, well, I really want to be in Jimbo's. And so they'll tell me, you know, what I need to do to meet the standards to get into your store. And I think a lot of people try to do that. And one of the benefits, I think, if Jimbo's is one of your first stores, is pretty much if you get into our store, most of the other natural food stores in San Diego, California, and the nation, you're going to probably be able to get to it, because right or wrong, we're probably as selective as almost any store in the nation as to what we allow in our store. So it's a combination of meeting our criteria to get into the store, but you need to be passionate about the product. You're going to have to learn, like you did, as you explained, in how what your journey's been, to you it's not going to just happen overnight, and you're going to have to learn about, unless you've already been in the food industry, going to be a big learning curve relative to that.
Yeah.
So
And speaking of your ingredients, I love that I think online you post the
yeah,
ingredients
yeah.
that are not allowed. So I knew, like right from the bat, I was like, okay, I printed out, double checked, and looked through.
If you have questions, our buyers are always willing to,
Right?
let you know, hey. So actually, quite sometimes I forget, which, I'll email, do we allow this, or, there's an ingredient that I'm not familiar with, and I'll say, can you tell me more about it? I mean, I could get it on the internet, but do we allow, what do you know about it, or whatever. So yeah, there's a fairly long list of things that we don't allow, and, sometimes, and, and and the other part is sometimes we have a category that is only organic ingredients, and somebody has a product that may be good but may not be organic ingredients. It still might meet our standards, but we say, well, everything else is organic in it, so we're going to probably stay organic. So but it's a journey for sure, and
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a village. It sounds like when you started, you had family and friends to support you and kind of encourage you, and sometimes that's what it needs.
Yeah, it definitely did, because I was very scared. I mean, I was like, doing it for my people I know is one thing, just because I enjoy it and it makes me happy that they love the song. But as a business, it's very scary, and it's still scary. But yeah, I would say passion is the number one thing, and it's one of those things where I've also learned a lot from other people's mistakes, right? I've seen brands that were able to raise a lot of money and push to grow so fast, and it doesn't matter. You can't buy the customers long term. So I'm trying to really, it may take longer. I may have to get another job. It's like whatever it is to keep it going, because it takes so long for that brand identity to be like, hey, I'm out of Win sauce. I gotta go pick up some more and have that habit. Right. So I
The other thing I would say is sometimes people forget they have product and they do everything right. Product's got to taste good at the end of the day. People got to like it. You're not, you can, people might buy it the first time
yes.
just to try it out, but at the end of the day, they're not going to buy it unless they like it. So, you really need to be, and I don't know how many iterations you needed to do to get to the product to the way you wanted it to be, but most people, there's a lot of R&D before they get it to the place that they say, okay, this is what I want to put on the shelf.
Right. I never knew I could be good at chemistry.
Well, you need to be good at that.
in the classroom in chemistry, but it was just like all these things. But I love it. I love to learn. And, I tell people this business beyond, like, of course, I'm a foodie. I love the food part and sharing, like food and flavors from my heritage. But I've never thought I'd be a host of a podcast or speak in front of 500 people. I had like an eye twitch for like 6 months after I did the pitch competition a few years ago, but it really pushes me out of my comfort zone. So,
Well, interestingly enough, growing up, I was pretty much a shy kid, and
yeah.
I've had to learn to,
Yeah.
be out there and talk. And, I'm one of these people that I think if I don't go to many parties, but if I went to a party, I'd sit in the corner and just observe. But in my work, there's a part of me that says I can't do that. So I've kind of
Yeah.
pushed myself to, like you said, to do things that maybe I wouldn't normally do.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Now
love
people say I talk too much, so I look back.
No, well, thank you so much, Jimbo. I know we're a little bit of time crunch, but it's a pleasure having you on the show and getting to know you better. I'm a huge ambassador of Jimbo's. It's become part of my lifestyle, and I got my kids recycling more and reusing bags, and I love it. Like we have all the lavender stuffy animals.
You go, girl.
Yeah,
Well,
people buy this stuff, and I'm like, well, I'm buying. So
thank you for inviting me. And, quite frankly, it was great to hear, some of your story. It's that much more meaningful to know that. And like I said, you should be proud that you even got to the place of getting it on the shelf. And, and I don't know how many storefronts you're in now, but whatever, wherever it goes, wherever it lands, it's just an amazing accomplishment to get as far as you have, and to do it from a place of really not knowing, from day one what it is that you needed to do to get it on the shelf. You should be proud of that
thank
accomplishment.
you. I
So
really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Well, to our listeners, I hope today's episode inspires you to think about the impact of the choices we make every day, what we eat, where we shop, and the local businesses we choose to support. If you'd like to learn more about Jimbo's, please visit their website and come check out their stores. I'll make sure to include all the links in the show notes. And thank you so much, Jimbo. It was so nice talking to you.
my pleasure. And if they come to the stores, they can buy your products.
That's right.
Section in the stores.
That's right.
They're great. You'll probably come back and buy it again once you try it. Take care, Wynn.